Okay, cool. Thank you. So David, we all know David. David's contributed to Koha since the early 2010s in many ways. He gave us some great tips yesterday on how we can all better support the Koha bugs process through writing more effective test plans and testing each other's patches. Today, he's going to talk about Koha documentation, covering the basic workflow for making changes to the manual and some of the recent improvements in this area, as well as contributing to the wiki and other ways that this community can help improve Koha documentation. Claps.
So, I have to plug in. I need power. Deathly silence. Right. And I better time myself. Right. Oh, thank you, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about contributing to Koha's documentation, and if you haven't seen the homepage of the current manual and documentation, it may, for a while, it's changed a little bit. There's still some things that are a work in progress. If you remember it from a while ago, it was a very long list of chapters in a random, semi-random sort of order. So we've tried to group them. It's not perfect yet, so if you've got any suggestions, you're welcome. I've got some follow-up changes to make, and yeah, we hope it helps a little bit. We've also got with us today attending, we've got Carolyn from Inebro, and she's way up the back, and Ord from Open Fifth, and so they've way more experienced at updating the manual than I am, so they should really be talking. But and I'd just like to thank all the recent the documentation team that we have, including Caroline Ord. We normally have Philip Orr from LMS Cloud and Marie Luce from Inebro as well. And we've had some recent contributions from some new people, Christy is up there, and Marion from Biblibre, and there's a few other people I've forgotten their name. But we do really appreciate people taking some time to learn how to improve our documentation, and for people who work for support providers or libraries, for letting them spend some time contributing in work time, and obviously some of them do it in their own time as well. So thank you, everyone, for helping improve things. And it's never perfect, and I'm not sure what we would do if it was perfect. So how can you contribute to our documentation? It is the manual, but there's also a few other things. So if that's a bit out of order. If you find documentation issues, you can let us know in the Mattermost documentation channel. Are most people on the Mattermost chat thing? Yes? No? Yes? Cool. And if you like, you can also create a bug in Bugzilla under the documentation component. So that's one place where we track things that need to be fixed or changed or updated. If you want to contribute documentation that you've written in whatever format, and and as long as you're willing to openly license it so that we can use it. We're happy for you to send it to us in any way you find convenient, whether it's attaching it to the bug, attaching it in the documentation channel, or sending it to our emails. We really like it, and we would take that and incorporate that into the manual. There's also the wiki, which most wikis need a bit of love most of the time, and so if you've got an account on the wiki, tidying up pages and making pages obsolete, and that's also a great way to help contribute to the documentation as well. And of course, I talked about this briefly yesterday, slightly. So adding release notes to bugs is really helpful as well. So helping people understand what this thing does when they look at the release notes or look at the bug report. We've also had a project going on for a while, and thanks to Jonathan Druitt at Biblibra, well, it works for everyone. He set up a system where we can automate some of our screenshots and generate them in multiple languages, so that you don't need to manually create a screenshot and incorporate it somewhere. It's still very much a work in progress, and if you'd like to help with that, Carolyn and I will be happy to show you. I'm still figuring it out. And of course, you can also edit the menu yourself, which is what I'm going to try and show you to do today. But before I do that, I don't really need to give this talk, because a month or so ago, Aud's created this little video on how the Koha menu is made, and she walks through a change and shows you how it gets into the manual. So if you don't remember anything I said or want to do something else, you can watch this video, which is much better than what I'm going to show you. So how do we do things with the manual specifically? So we use what's commonly called a docs as code approach, which basically means we have version control and we use Git, and don't be too scared, because with the documentation we use most of us use very few Git commands. If we get into trouble, we ask for some help and we move on with our life. We use a lightweight markup, or it's really a markdown language, restructured text. It's similar, I guess, if you're familiar with Markdown. It's similar to AsciiDoc, which is another one that's used for documentation, but we use restructured text at the moment. And we use a static site generator, so it takes the source files for each page and turns it into a web page that you can view and browse. And then every time we make a change, and we automatically, goes through a process and gets incorporated into the manual, and that's done. We use GitLab automated deployment thingies. Just a shout out to Jonathan again, because he helps us with some when we get into technical difficulty and things aren't working, if we can't solve it. So thank you. Technical writers, or people who write documentation, or technical communicators, they like being consistent and having some rules, and you don't need to know them all, because we don't know them all either. But we've adopted the Google Developer Style Guide as our base, but we have some changes to it. And we chose that, not everyone likes Google, but the content is openly licensed under Creative Commons by license. So it means we can incorporate it into our own documentation when we do choose to, and adapt it and reuse it. The translation is done using Weblate, the same translation tools that are used for the rest of Koha. So if you our interest, the French user group is very strong in translating the manual, and there's some really unsung heroes like Katrin, who always are translating the German version of the manual, and everyone else who does the translation working behind the scenes. So that's a great way to help with the documentation as well, and you pick up things that us English writers get wrong or don't make sense when you translate them. So we're always happy to incorporate things to make the translation easier. I mentioned we've been working on automated screenshots, so I'm not sure what percentage we're up to, but it's still, we've got a wee way to go yet. But yeah, but once we get a reasonable way, then that's going to save a lot of time and help things stay more up to date. We keep track of most things we do in Bugzilla, just like for Koha itself, where you create a bug and it goes through the development cycle. We use that as well to keep track of things that need to change in the documentation. So once a normal Koha bug goes through the development process and it's backported to the maintenance releases, it has a needs documenting status, and we can get a list of all of those and go through them and see what needs documenting and work on them. In Bugzilla, you can also create a documentation bug under the documentation component. So we love people doing that, and I'm not always as responsive as responding, but Ord and Philip and Carolyn normally are. We also have something we used a while ago, which is the manual keyword. So there's still plenty of bugs with the manual keyword, which means they need updates, or may still need updating in the manual. And there's also a search which lets you search. We've added the Academy keyword to some of the documentation bugs, which are generally nice, easy ones to start on. And I just spotted my spelling mistake. That was deliberate, of course. So if you want to get involved, we meet online each month, and we have a page with a link to the agenda and the time, and it's in the community calendar. Chat with us on the documentation channel. Ord and Philip run some online drop-in sessions workshops, so if you've got questions, feel free to come along, and we're happy to work you through the process then, or if you ask us on the documentation channel, we're happy to walk you through and get you started. I guess I have a slightly different approach to creating documentation, and this may help you when someone says, we need to document this. So I take what I call a topic-based approach when I've got things to document, and this is basically trying to break down things into topics to write about. And there's generally 4 main different types. So it could be a task, so do this, work through these steps to step 1, step 2, step 3, and some instructions. And that's really designed, a lot of time when people are looking at documentation, they're looking to solve a problem or do something that they don't know how to do. So generally they can be the most popular. Often when you're doing those step-by-step instructions, you need to look up some things. So, Koha's got lots of drop-down lists with various options, and the forms have got lots of fields to fill in. So having a reference topic or section that says, hey, this is where you can look this up to see what you need to put in each of those. Koha lives in the library world, of course, and some library concepts can be challenging for non-library people like myself. So, Mark 21 and Unimark and all the different ways people do things. And then we never have to troubleshoot issues, so we don't really need that last one, which is working through trying to solve problems. And what we try and do in the documentation team is keep a watch on what people post in chat or mailing list, and we've got this document which lists documentation pain points, and ideally we'd like to help people solve problems, just point them to somewhere in the manual so that it's got the answer, but we've still got a wee way to go for that yet. And then basically combining these to create a useful product that people can use, like a how-to guide or reference, or incorporating it into the appropriate sections of the manual. Anyway, that's how I approach trying to document things. It's not the only approach, but I thought you might find it handy if you have to document something. So I'm going to tempt the demo gods, and we're going to, and I've got a tiny little bit of time to work through this. So we've got these steps documented on our wiki, and this is an abbreviation. So the first step is to create a GitLab account. Now, I've got a zillion tabs open. So for those that don't have a GitHub account, a GitLab account, we haven't used GitHub for a while. This is GitLab, and it's, I guess, a community choice around if something went pear-shaped with GitLab, we can take our repositories and spin up our own one, or move it to Forjo or somewhere else. So we're not locked in. So you go to sign in. Everyone wants to know whether we're humans these days. And you go through the normal thing you would do to create an account on any sort of service. So once you've got a GitLab account, what you need to do is, and I've created this demo one, you need to go to where we store the Koha manual source document, and I didn't include a URL in my presentation, but it's in the instructions anyway. And so you basically need to, this is our single source of where everything sits, so we don't really want people to muck it up too much, unless we do it, of course. So normally with GitLab, and this is not going to be any surprise to people who are used to source code repositories, you create a new fork or a copy of the manual, and you give it a name. Well, you generally leave it the same, and in my case, this demo account, it'll sit under my account, and I will have a copy. And I'm not sure what the screen size is like because I'm looking at these screens. Cool. So I'm not going to use my demo account to do this. I'm going to use my real account, and I've got a copy of the manual, and I can play with it as much as I like if I know how. So the first step is really familiarizing yourself here with the file structure. And it really follows the manual. Oops, and I have to find the manual. So a lot of what's in the manual is about using Koha, and they're organized around the modules, so cataloging. Yeah, so I'm not sure how big that is up there, it's called cataloging HTML because we've turned it into a web page. So to find that, if you find something in this page that needs to be fixed up, you need to find the source for that. And there's a handy little link to the source page, but I'm going to do it the hard way. So there's a whole lot of files in this repository, but all the ones you need to know for editing the manual is the source folder. And under that, there's some CSS files and some other folders, the images and a few other folders. So in this case, the cataloging one was called cataloging, and that's the file that we need to change. And so each of the pages in the manual will match up with a page in this source, in a file in this source folder. So I don't think that will be a surprise for most people. Right. So once you get sort of familiar with that, and the other challenge with our manual is some of the pages are quite long, so getting familiar with the manual and where everything is in there can be challenging too. So identifying something to work on is probably the next challenge. You might have spotted a spelling mistake, or you want to add a new system preference that's been added to Koha, or you want to correct some steps. So in the dashboard, who isn't familiar with the dashboard? Everyone's familiar with the dashboard. Maybe they're not familiar with the dashboard. So it's a way of us to provide a nice little visual interface to all the workflow and things that need to be done. And I'm sure someone's looking at all these critical and major things. So yeah, there's things like needs sign-off and needs QA and going through the development process, and ones that the release manager can put in Koha. Further down, there's stuff that people have marked as needing a release note, and there's needs documenting. So there's quite a lot of those. And so that generates a list of all the bugs that have gone through the development process and need to be looked at to see whether we need to update the manual. And if you've worked on a bug, or you've got a particular topic or thing, a new feature or enhancement that you want documented, knock yourself out. The other bit that we have is when you go to Bugzilla itself, you can search for bugs. Oops, no, you can browse for bugs. Oh, no, there's no browse there. Anyway, there's browse up the top, and all the bugs are organised that we want to deal with under Koha, and then there's the documentation component that's generally organised under the modules, if you didn't know already. And these are other ones that aren't related to changes going into Koha that people have identified that need to be things that need to be fixed up. And we also, I mentioned the Academy keyword for doc bugs, so we've got some relatively simple, I should never call it simple. We've got some relatively straightforward ones that are when you're starting out, like fixing up a link and documenting a new system preference. So that's a good place, an easy list to start off. I've picked one that's none of those things to. So there's a new system preference, and if you went through it's to do with the new preferred name field and getting them to show up in the search results, which is a nice enhancement to that feature. So I've picked this one to update. So the first thing to figure out from the bug is what needs to be updated. And this is relatively straightforward. There's a new system preference. It's to do with patrons, and so we need to find out where we need to update that in the manual. So, and it's all the system preferences sit in their own section now because it's more of a reference section, and it's under patrons. And I also looked it up in Koha and did a search on all our system preferences to find that it was actually under patrons. So here's our new system preference. It's not particularly complicated, so that's why I chose it to do this. So how do we make that appear in this list of system preferences? So I'm going to find the page that's all the system preferences. So I can see up here the patron preferences is the page name where this will sit on. And yeah, cool. And this is the file that I need to update to do that. But before I do that, what most people normally do is this. The manual at the moment is pointing to what's the single source of truth at the moment, and I don't want to muck my copy up if I can help it. So normally you'd make a branch. So I'm going to make a new branch. It just basically takes a copy and says, if I stuff this up, I can delete this branch. The main source copy that I've got is not going to be. I can go back in time and pretend I didn't cock it up. So I normally give it the bug number and give it a name and what it is. 402. And I'm sorry this is not as exciting as our previous speaker and all the interesting things that are going on. Cool. And then I go and, once that's created, I go and find that system preference file, the source file that we need to update. And you get a sort of, it does a reasonable preview of the whole page. A while ago, well, quite a while ago now, it never used to display things right. Cool. So GitLab has you can edit a single page or you can edit multiple pages, and it's got a little web, they call it IDI. It's really designed for coding people, but it'll load a text editor in our browser. And I have to go down and find that again. Cool. And I figured out earlier on where I wanted to put this so that you didn't have to see me thinking, which can take a while. So this new system preference sits in just, we get there eventually. Just before the statistics fields system preference, and normally unless it needs to be grouped, we'll group it in near the other ones that are what you see in the staff interface. So yeah, it comes before the statistics. I pre-prepared this and I'll explain some of the stuff. And we've got a little tips and tricks guide to using restructured text, so you don't need to try and remember everything. Oops, that's me doing it the way I do it. So I'm just going to slot that in there. And what that's saying is this makes this a link, so we can link to the system preference elsewhere in the manual or anywhere else. Headings use funny characters, and just to say this is a heading, and you have to use the right sort of character so that it displays right. We generally repeat what's in the user interface. So this system preference asks you those characters there say there's some options here, and this is what it says. The default is it's not going to show the patron's first name if their preferred name is different. And here's some of the values. So there's not much more to this one. I could possibly link it to the page about creating patrons and searching patrons, but I haven't done that yet. Cool. So, yeah, if someone looks up the manual now or searches Google, then, or whatever their preferred search engine is, and now with little AI snippets, you never know whether it's going to show up or not. Cool. And what we also try to do with the manual is, and I've got 1 minute, we have a what's new section for each of the releases. And it's not really a repetition of the release notes, it's just these are the things that we've managed to incorporate into the manual so far. So we would normally we'd normally we'd go to the what's new page and add a little what's new entry, but I'll do this later. Cool. So I've finished this, and so now I want to incorporate this into, save it and send it to the manual. And this is, so like all good things, it shows you what's different, so it looks okay to me. And someone will have to point out to me where tick. Yeah, cool. So we want to save this change, which is to make a commit in Git terms. And it also asks you, it would normally pop up, I think it pops up somewhere with the writing in a commit message, but so you can keep on saving it until you're happy with it, until you're happy to submit it to the documentation team so they can review it and incorporate it into the manual. I'm going to go straight to, and you do that by creating a merge request. And if I'd done a proper commit message, it would have come up with that, and I'm just going to paste that in. So for our commit messages, we keep them pretty clean, easy to, we don't add too much. So this is all I've done in that one. Cool. And now I'd say create a merge request. Cool, and that shows up the people, all our current documentation team can review all those changes. So this is the main version of the manual. And I can go to merge requests, and there's a new merge request from me, and then we would go through and say, tick the button, review it, and say, yes, we're happy with that. Press the button, and it will end up in the manual. So I will do that in a few minutes after I finish my presentation. And then, in addition, so the changes are reviewed by the documentation team. And we'll press the button, and it'll auto-generate the manual again, and you'll also update the bug. And I can show you that later. There's a whole lot of resources here, wiki pages at the moment, and so we'll, in this presentation, when I make this live, I'll link to it so you can get the links. And if you want to, I guess that it looks like a lot, but once you're set up and once you're familiar with the folder structure and using the web editor and restructured text format, then it can be, the hard part starts actually writing stuff. So, yeah. If you decide you don't want to do that and you're just going to say a bug, we're happy for bug reports for docs. If you do want to learn to go through this in a bit more detail, there's a workshop if you're staying for the working together days, so feel free to come along and we'll walk you through it. Some people, like myself, work on it locally and submit it a different way, but we find that editing in the web is okay for most people. So that's sort of all I wanted to cover today, and we're happy to get changes, and we'd love you to contribute in some way, whether it's just letting us know that there's something that needs fixed or providing stuff you've written outside it, and we're happy to put it in. So thank you.